Kia ora koutou, ko Joe Simons tōku ingoa. Is to say hi to everyone, and my name is Joe Simons, and I'm the Manager Content Discovery and Innovation at Waipapa Taumatarau, the University of Auckland. But I'm here today with my ANZREG committee hat on to say no mai haere mai, or welcome to our first ANZREG webinar of 2026. And today, wonderful presenters from several different universities are going to share their experiences around where and how they're making the move to Primo NDE. So I'm speaking to you from the Central City campus in Tamaki Makaurau, and I'd like to acknowledge the Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei, who are the traditional custodians of this land. But as a representative of ANZREG, we'd like to give our respects um, and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which our Australian community work and live. And we pay respect to their elders, past and present, for their wisdom, teaching, and cultural knowledge. But I'm also going to start us off with a karakia to get everyone in the right sort of mindset for where we're going. Kia hora, te marino, kia whakapapa pōnamu te moana, he huarahi ma tātou I te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa. Kia ora. So, today we're going to run it. We've got three awesome presentations. We're going to start off with Craig from Lincoln, and then Peter and Jesse from Bond are going to talk a bit about their experience, and Dave from RMIT is going to talk a bit about where they are with not quite going yet, with going live yet with NDE. We've got the three presentations to get through, so we should have plenty of time, but I am going to ask folks to keep your questions for a Q&A session at the end. If you want to, you can stick your questions into the chat as we go. And there are a couple of other members of the ANZREG committee who are here, and they'll keep an eye on the chat as well and make sure that all the questions do get answered. What else? Any other housekeeping? Please keep the microphone on mute, unless we're at the point where you actually want to ask a question, which you're more than welcome to do at that point. But otherwise, I will say I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone's got to say and learning from the experience where everyone's making the move that we're all going to have to make eventually for this, which is exciting and interesting. But at that point, I will stop sharing and I will hand over to Craig. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Joe. Thank you for that. Just give me a wee moment to share my screen. E te ti, e te tā. No mai, haere mai. Ko Craig Murray, ko toko ingoa, he kaimataka matahiko ahau. No te whare porakau au te whare wanaka au aoraki. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora, my name's Craig Murray, and I'm one of two digital services analysts here at Lincoln University. I'd like to start off by thanking ANZREG for organising this webinar. As NDE is brand new, it's hard to know what information the community is wanting from such a session. But today, I'd like to give you some insight into our rollout of Primo VE NDE UI. A lot of acronyms. We'll look at our key drivers for Go Live, the modifications required to fulfill those requirements, and the integrations that we focused on. And of course, we'll give you a little hint about the results. So I guess the decision to go live now was made so much easier because we're in a very small university library that basically uses Primo as a pure catalog. We're not using a lot of the features that you folk depend on that are still in the delivery roadmap. So we kind of hoped that NDE was going to be like a new skin over VE, and everything that we wanted would continue unaffected. Okay. Um, Another thing that one of the drivers is that to go just straight out of the box is that there's only a small team of us. There's three people, Yanan Zhao, Deborah Fitchett, and myself. And with Deborah's promotion to the Associate University Librarian position, that means we just have less capacity for time-consuming troubleshooting and fixing a primo. The third driver was there was a desire to have the new interface available for our 2026 cohort. Midterm sort of rollouts, mid-semester rollouts were deemed suboptimal and in danger of the next driver. We've got quite a major building upgrade coming. Whether we have to decant this building at the end of the year, next year, we kind of just wanted some stability, and we thought if we could roll this out the door as soon as possible, that would give us time to do the building upgrade planning. Acceptance criteria. I think there's three basically. Lincoln branding. We were part of the November 25 go live NDE cohort training, where branding was a primary focus. So we ticked that off with that training. Like everybody, I think we want all our integrations working, and we created a spreadsheet and of the functions and features that we wanted to test in NDE. And once we had access to our UI after the general release in 25, we worked our way through those. There wasn't anything major that we found. And of course, minimal customizations, nothing too surprising. Our migration planning to NDE was heavily influenced by our migration from classic PMO to VE way back then. When we did our migration then, we wanted a seamless introduction, which meant we went through each element, replicating the look and feel, the branding, the behavior of Primo Classic. And if you were to put Primo Classic and Primo VE together, you'd be hard pressed. But that involved a lot of coding and a lot of work. And of course, as the years progressed, various updates came along and broke our CSS. And when Ex Libris commenced their Primo accessibility work, making our non-compliant UI and keeping it working without it suddenly popping up with blue on green. Yeah. So that work just became unsustainable. But we did have two no-go criteria. The first one was our Ask Live service. We have our chat service through Library Help, and we realized very early on that this was going to need a customized configuration. So I'll speak more on that in the next slide. The other no-go was we just could not understand why Ex Libris would roll out a UI without the facet panel being sticky. And so they were our two no-goes. If we couldn't make those work, we were not going to roll out. And that was basically it. There was a couple of vanity things that I wanted. I quite like having the exclude buttons visible because people have to hover over it to realize that they're there. So there's a slight CSS coding hack there. And I really like, again, vanity, the right alignment of the number counts in the facet bar. So what modifications were required? Like I said, our chat services with library help, and Amy was amazing. They had an NDE add-on that they'd already built for another customer. Within 4 days, she turned that round to an interface that we wanted because we wanted the chat service to actually overlay the Contact Us toolbar button. And we had a pop-up that we wanted as well. So if you need a custom component and don't have the technical ability, reach out to your vendor and then to the community. So next slide. The other core modification no-go was that we wanted the facet panel open by default. That was coming in May, June. So I wrote a CSS script that basically changed the visibility and moved stuff around the screen. But of course, the March update, we've now moved to that, and it works so much better than my fudge. So we do get a facet open by default. If you're wanting to see the code of the exclude button and the right align search, it's on our GitHub page, so have a look if you're interested. I guess what we also took the opportunity to do for the integrations was to roll out libkey. Third Iron had a NDE add-on that was in beta. We took advantage of that, and NDE add-ons are awesome. The Angular code is hosted by the vendor, and we don't really have to touch it. So NDE's add-ons are really good. Published Primo worked fine, obviously. We had to tweak the OpenURL syntax in Google Scholar and Alma, and we had to do the same tweak in OCLC to get WorldCat to actually show our catalog. And that's in the OCLC admin interface. We were particularly keen on making sure our external resources, DSpace, Figshare, and the like were working, and we had absolutely no problems. I think the real big problem that we came up with was that we don't use the Primo homepage. And because of the hard-coded nature of our Primo search bar on our website, we could not test that until we went live. So we went live, and that just did not work. So we quickly identified the issue where the search box was actually pointing to our Primo Classic, and we rolled back to VE. I'm not sure Ex Libris knows that we did that, but we did. Once the hard coding was changed by our website vendor, we were confident about going live again. Leganto, we're also a Leganto library. We tested Leganto, but we tested only the LTI links and making sure they were redirecting to NDE. Subsequently, an issue has arisen where we actually have to point Leganto back to a pure VE view so that it could update the status of physical inventory. So there's a little bit of work Ex Libris has to do about that, but our workaround works well. It works. So late on Tuesday, the 3rd of February, we went live with NDE. And I'm just going to take you through to our NDE. This is our web page. Like I said, we don't have a landing page, a Primo landing page. Facets are sticky. They came up by default. They can be collapsed. We've got the exclude buttons visible. And we've got our nice alignment of the number count. Ask Live is an overlay of the Contact Us button, and it asks, just goes to our chat service. That's what I was looking for. After about 30 seconds, there is a pop-up that comes through, and if the person is navigated to another resource and page, that still pops up after 30 seconds. That all works with our Terreo interface. And I'll just go back to the English interface. And the other thing we did is we introduced collections. We hadn't used them before, but we were using this, and the collections facet bar does come through. And yeah. So I'm going back to our slide deck. That one. Brilliant. And so that's what we introduced straight out of the box, basically, very little into customization. We have no formal assessment process. There was no survey, no usability testing. We had no negative comments. So we just ticked it off and moved on. Future focus obviously is the open URL syntax with some of the vendors might need updating. We're keeping an eye on NDE updates and going, so that's what that function was for. And obviously, my personal thing would be to see alt metrics in our NDE view. So kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'll stop sharing.
Kia ora, Craig. That was great. Thank you. I agreed with Dave. We all think the right alignment of your number count's fantastic. We may all be stealing that one, I think. Awesome. I will hand over next to Peter and Jessie to tell us about their move. You're on mute, Peter.
I knew I'd forget something. Jingari Jimbalung, and that's a Yuga greeting from the land of the Kombumerri people, where Bond University is located. And so we pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. And I know Jessie and I have each got our own slides, and I know time's short, so I might zip through a few of these, but I thought I'd err on the side of putting detail in here so people can refer to it later if they need to. The first few slides are around the guiding principles. We started work on this project largely in around May last year, and we went live on the 5th of January this year. So we started working through quite a few things, and we sort of reassessed then, well, how are we making decisions? And we saw some other institutions guiding principles and thought, oh, that's really good. That will help us crystallize how we're thinking about making some of these decisions. So this is sort of built on some of their work. So inclusive and user-centered design was one of the key things for us. And we acknowledge that there are still UX features that are not ideal, but this principle came to the fore in allocating our resourcing and the time that we wanted to ensure that the cultural safety customizations that we had developed in VE had some priority, and that other customizations where our users were not really using it very much or didn't have any particular value for it were either deprioritized or abandoned altogether. So it was really about finding a balance for resourcing and the focus usability. So some of the actions there were around learning from the Primo communities, accessibility testing, monitoring audits and vendor responses from Ex Libris, reporting issues as we found them and advocating for fixes and corrections And we committed to consult on and adapt the cultural advice customisations that we'd worked on in VE. Streamline and sustainable solutions, as Craig mentioned about, resourcing. It's a similar situation here where Jessie and I make up the entire library tech team. We certainly called on other members in our team to participate in testing and providing feedback, but the large portion of the work in actually moving to NDE sat with our team. And so making decisions where we can find sustainable solutions for such a small team were really important to us. So things like reviewing all of the customizations that we had in VE against out-of-the-box functionality in NDE or alternatives, adapting only the selected customizations that we couldn't do with out-of-the-box. We even chose an out-of-the-box dynamic palette for styling that's close to the Bond branding, but is not exactly our Bond branding colours. And then formalising these guiding principles as the evidence and the backup, but the reason as to why we actually did that. So we're treating it more like one of those other systems, like say Blackboard or whatever, where we don't get a huge amount of control over the colour and the palette. So this is part of our search and find ecosystem, and it's a product, and this is kind of where we're at with it. And we've decided to use the standard vertical banner instead of a custom pop-up for the site-wide cultural note. Jessie will talk about that a bit more in her slides. Wherever possible, insight-driven decisions. So we're really leveraging analytics to assess usage patterns, identify trends, and inform decisions about the discovery experience, really learning from user behavior evidence, but a lot of that for Jessie and I is governed by the feedback and the interactions we get with our library academic services team, who are working with students every day and observing how they're actually using library search. We use a lot of Primo and Google Analytics to see, has these features been used in Primo VE? Is it something we need to focus attention on or not? So we assess feature readiness for our go live criteria, and where possible to develop contingencies based on usage data. I think I mentioned some of those other things. We did actually spend a bit of time designing the landing page, and that was heavily driven by library web traffic, not just our websites, but our research guides, the library booking site, the FAQs, and also the tickets that get submitted with inquiries, looking at all those things. What is going to be the most useful to put on that landing page? Continuous innovation is another driver, and this is where we're reviewing all the monthly release notes, monitoring the NDE roadmap, proposing product improvements. We tested the new natural language search, and we do have that turned on with some significant, I think, labeling changes where we're not just going to tell our students to ask us anything. It's like, please be a little bit careful about what you ask us. And we also looked at other database interfaces to look at patterns of behavior, so people can find things in consistent sort of places. Collaboration and engagement is the other one. So that's feedback. We invited feedback on the cultural advice customizations from our stakeholders here at the university to make sure we had their input. We didn't get a lot of feedback from them, but in fact, I don't know that we got any. So we worked on the assumption that, if we had to change something down the track, we would just have to do so. We consulted with library teams to incorporate their expertise on behaviour, metadata and collections. We consulted with IT services as early as possible on anything that was to do with security or other technical implications affecting privacy authentication. And we shared learnings wherever we could in the Primo list or in the ANZREG list. And we had a local cohort of Australian, I'm not sure, was there a New Zealand site on there, but a little email group that Kale Driscoll was very kindly sort of motivated us all to get started with that one. Oops. Skipped, I missed a page. And then sharing customization code and experiences. So Jessie will talk some more about that as well. So the large portion of May to December was really on this process of testing, tracking, and then towards the end of it was about triage. So it was monitor release notes, test on sandbox, test on production, and then reiterate as features and fixes were released, as our cases were updated to say it's coming in this month. So we were just kind of, wash, rinse, repeat for quite a few months there. We were tracking, we logged 75 support cases in that period, and we've logged another 13 since then. So that's a bit of an indication on how much chunk of work was being undertaken, and we had to fit that around our other operational and strategic priorities as well. We created 3 exchange ideas. 2 of those have been converted to curve enhancement requests as well. And I did, and us too, on 26 known issues. Jessie may have had some more there that I'm not aware of, but so we were monitoring all of those things. And we used Microsoft Planner to sort of track tasks and issues. And I'll show you a screenshot of that in a moment, just to give you an idea of the labels that we were using. As we got nearer to our launch, we were looking at triaging. It's like, what are the things that are not going to be fixed in time by the date we want? Once again, using analytics to gauge the size of the impact or the number of users who are going to be used. Was it affecting a large pool of resources, or is it just the PDFs that happen to be in Alma-D? Or was it only happening on an iPad, for example? We assessed the timing through the roadmap and cases pending versions. How long was the wait? We looked at things that we could avoid by turning features off temporarily, or things we could ignore because maybe it was just cosmetic and a fix was coming anyway, or what could we tweak to deal with that. So since we'd allocated resourcing for 2025, we decided to stay the course unless there was a humongous showstopper. If we deferred it because there were only 2 of us doing the bulk of this work, we would still have had all this chunk of work to do, but having to try and fit it in with other emerging strategic priorities. So that timing was kind of a critical thing looming over us as well. So this is the planner, and you can see when we logged a case, we'd put a case submitted on it. If we knew the timing, we had things like, none of these have timing, but we'd put the month or the quarter or whatever it was that they had been communicated to us, whether it was the status awaiting development. There's an October release you can see there. So that just gave us a way of kind of tracking how things were going. And some of them, like this blue one, was an internal library decision. So we had to get the rest of the library here to decide whether we were going to still continue with online chat. The decision was no. So that was a decision we had to make, and it was totally external to anything Ex Libris or NDE was doing. Was for us to decide what we were going to do next with that knowledge. Some of the workaround. So there's a lot here, and sorry about all the text. But you can see there were quite a few things that where they came up and we thought these are really important. These were the sorts of things where we went, oh, we can live with it if we do this. So it was things like we turned off the report a problem widget until the capture issue was resolved. We use CSS to do things like where there's no configuration option to turn off the update personal details link. We wanted the vertical banner to show more text. There were some labels that weren't supporting HTML at the time we went live. They are since then, but because NDE had completely reworked how the requesting user experience worked, we kind of could live with that. We still don't have libkey links add-on deployed because we have an ongoing issue where users navigate to the next record, the next record, the next record, and they libkey presents them with the wrong link, shows them the previous one. We have a similar issue with the lib maps from SpringShare add-on. So that's still just in testing phase as well for us. We're using an Alma integration profile instead for that. We had to modify labels that don't make sense until they release a feature in May. So you may have come across that one already. It's been discussed a bit. Figuring out how to link to specific pages after sending someone through single sign-on, because the menu link doesn't work, doesn't just redirect, and the previous syntax doesn't work. So we had a bit of figuring out how to do that and updating our links in places. Maintaining extra non-NDE views for Leganto, although that appears to all be resolved for us. But also for patron deposits, we still have a non-NDE view we've had to create for that. I'll leave the others there. I think the Campus M ones probably we might be the only site in Australia who's actually using Campus M, but it gives you an idea of the sort of things that contingencies that we had to deal with. And you all know where to find our library search. So I think I might be done, and I'll hand over to Jessie.
Thank you, Peter. And I will have a go sharing my screen and find my mouse. Okay. So as Peter mentioned, we had several cultural safety customizations we had created for Primo VE that we wanted to carry across into NDE. So I'll just run through some of the work we did to get that going. And I'll also add in one other extra bit of customization work that I did. So that'll be at the end. So one of the cultural safety components we created in VE was a pop-up box that displayed throughout the interface, and it contained a cultural advice notice as well as our acknowledgement of country. So we wanted to retain this in NDE, but we thought it was a good opportunity to revisit how we did it and maybe make it more harmonious with the user interface in NDE. So as you can see, the VE pop-up box, it is quite lengthy. And because it was a customization that we created, it at times it would overlap with existing functionality in Primo. It had to be dismissed by the user in order to close it. And so we could see how this would cause some frustration with our users, and we were concerned about that negative sentiment towards such an important message we wanted to show in our interface. So for the NDE UI, we took a different approach. We added our acknowledgement to country on our Primo NDE homepage instead. And then with our cultural advice, we tried out using the resource recommender vertical banner option to display the notice within the interface. So this approach really gave us several advantages there. We were using an out-of-the-box functionality. So that meant it would be device responsive. It doesn't block or overlap existing functionality, which also then reduces the risk of user frustration. And it also results in lower maintenance and overhead for us because we aren't maintaining a custom component. We did find there were a couple of, I guess, limitations or disadvantages to doing it in this way. So I'll just flip over to the interface now to show you. So you can see our vertical banner there on the right-hand side. One of the problems we found is that you can only have one banner displaying at one time. So we do, throughout the semester, display different banners on promotions or special things that are happening in the library. So if we decide to do that, we have to temporarily disable our cultural advice banner and then re-enable it again at a later date. The other thing that we found is that we need to have our filter and facets panel collapsed by default, because if it is displaying, then the vertical banner disappears. So we were a little bit concerned about that. As Craig mentioned in the March release, you can configure to have your filter and facets panel on by default. So we were weighing up the benefits of having built-in out-of-the-box functionality to display this really important cultural advice notice in our interface against having the facet panel open or hidden by default. We looked at the mixed panel analytics just to get a sense of whether our users are actually finding the facets okay, considering that they have been collapsed by default since we went live in January. And the data does kind of indicate this, as well as the fact that we also have our top filter bars here that are always displaying. So you've got your availability filters as well as the resource type filters. So when you initially do your search, they display straight away. They're not hidden at all. So people are also using these. So we weighed up, all of those different things and decided that we would keep the cultural advice notice in that vertical banner. Then the other two customizations that we started to plan to transfer over to NDE were the two indicators or labels that we had appearing on records for First Australian content and content advice resources. So we did this initially in VE, and I have put in the link to our GitHub repository there, which explains all the background around that. I think we did that in 2024 and has the code in there for the VE customizations. So our aim was really to carry this across to NDE UI. And again, when we created it for VE, we tried to harmonize these labels alongside existing labels like open access and peer reviewed. So they appeared in the similar position as those other existing labels do, had a similar look and feel. So for the NDE UI, we wanted to do the same kind of thing. Before I show you what that exactly looks like, I will run through some of the self-help resources out there for NDE, because the way NDE is set up, we know it's using an Angular environment. It's not the same as VE, where you can just whack all your code into a custom JS file and pretty much away you go. NDE is very different. So there was a huge learning curve there. I still went into it with a really positive mindset. Even though I'm not a developer, I thought I'll give it a go and I'll keep trying until we get there. So I put on the page here a few different links. So the first one is to the Ex Libris GitHub repository for how to set up the NDE customization package, essentially a development environment for NDE. They have also provided some examples of custom components, and they're really good to see the exact code that you kind of need to use in order to get something developed. They have done 2 recordings, webinar recordings. They follow a very similar pattern. Some stuff is covered in both of them, but at the same time, there's enough unique information shared in both of those videos to be worth watching both of them. And then I also wanted to make sure I had a bit of an understanding about Angular. Not that I would be, creating a lot of stuff from scratch myself, but what do I need to know to understand how Angular works, how it's set up in a development environment? What are the key things I need to keep an eye out for when I'm creating custom components? So I found LinkedIn Learning a course called Learning Angular, and I just worked my way through the first few modules of that to get the understanding I felt I would need and benefit from when it came to creating custom components for NDE. And finally there, I've just linked to a blog that's on the Ex Libris Developer Network, and it's a good example of how a custom component is created, as well as some of the gotchas around the unique setup of Primo VE and Angular. And I've listed their Copilot as well. Copilot did most of the heavy lifting with the coding, and there's no way I could have done the customizations without the use of Copilot. So most of the coding was done by Copilot, and then I just drew on my skills of tweaking and adapting and testing and trying and repeating that process over and over again till I got something that worked. Next, okay, so now I can show you. These are our 2 indicators in the NDE interface today. So the equivalent of what we had in VE. We have our First Australians indicator as well as our content advice indicator. All the code is in our GitHub repository, which I'll just open up, show you some of the stuff in there. So the first page is just going through a little overview of what it is, how you might consider adapting it, what you need to include in the custom one module file, at the selectors that are used to determine where to display the custom components. In each of these folders is the code required for both indicators. I decided to keep them separate, so if I needed to change something in one, I wouldn't be impacting the other, or if we wanted to disable one, again, we could do that without impacting the other indicator. Each of these folders contain the required files needed for the custom component. So obviously you've got your HTML, which shows what to display. So essentially the wording, content advice, the CSS file to determine how it should be styled in the interface, and then the script that looks at the data being presented in NDE and knowing when to show the indicator. In this particular one, for the content advice indicator, it is using a local display field. So if you choose to adapt this code or reuse it, you'll just have to check that what your local display field is and change it in this particular file to match yours. The First Australians indicator is very similar in how it is structured. And then in addition to those two components, which are, is the majority of the work in terms of showing the indicators, I also have an NDE store service and an NDE selector. And these both work together alongside the custom components to show the indicators and to also understand whether a user is looking at the results page of Primo NDE or whether they're opened up a full record or when they're navigating to another record and then, determining whether to show the indicators or not. So that's all there, ready for anyone to take a peek at and adapt. And also interested to hear if you spot anything that maybe shouldn't be there in the code itself, knowing that Copilot, as I said, did a lot of the work. And then finally, I wanted to end on this. So one of the early things that we did, as Peter mentioned, was spend a bit of time figuring out what we wanted on our NDE homepage. We knew we wanted to keep those quick links that appear under the search box, but we found that the links we wanted to use in that block there and the associated icons didn't really match what we wanted. So what I did was wrangle Adobe Illustrator in order to create custom icons for our quick links. But we have since discovered another tool called Boxy SVG Editor, which is much easier to use. And I thought, to save anybody some time, I'd record a short how-to video on how you can create your own custom icons, essentially just using Boxy SVG Editor and Google Font icons. So that's there that you can have a little look at in your own time. And that's it. That's everything I wanted to show. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter and Jessie. I must say, I think everyone in the community really appreciates the amount of work that the ANZREG early adopters have put in and how much you've been sharing with everyone about not just what you've seen, but your fixes for everything as well. It's been really awesome. Right. Well, I will hand over to David so he can talk about their journey so far.
Thank you very much, Joe. I get to be the cynical person that explains why we didn't take on NDE. Not just yet. I also have to say I feel like after Peter listed all the steps that you went through, I feel like we just rushed through it and kind of was flying by the seat of our pants, but that's okay. That's another way to do it. Can people see my screen? Yes. Good. That's right. Thank you. So my name is David Witterveen. No? Oh,
No,
sorry.
not yet.
Yeah, I click share. I click share. I click share. Now you should be able to see my screen.
Yep, all good.
Thank you very much. So my name is David Witterveen. I'm the manager of the Digital Innovation Discovery and Library Systems team. And this is why we have not gone live yet. So I'll jump to the first thing. So just a quick little bit about our project. We have a 4-person library systems team here at RMIT. We also had some help and design and usability help from our digital learning team. So our digital learning team create digital learning material for academics, but we also have a usability expert who did a lot of accessibility testing, and he also created our cascading style sheets, our CSS, for us to match with the RMIT standard. And we put together a volunteer NDE testing group. Literally just sent a call out to the library saying, hey, does anyone want to be in the testing group? We had about 16 volunteers join, which was probably too many, but it's great to see the enthusiasm, and didn't actually end up using them very much, which I can talk about later. In terms of our timeline, we had planned that we would attend the NDE UI transition cohort program, which is run by Ex Libris in November. And then we would spend December and January configuring NDE, and then we'd make the go or no-go live decision at the end of January. So we had a fairly short project period for that, but we thought that that was probably reasonable. The other thing too was right from the start, I was saying we are going to make a go live or not go live decision. If we don't make that deadline, that's totally fine. Like, you know, it's the current interface works. It's great. We don't need to go live. We'd only go live if we're really happy with it. Just for anyone who is yet to start thinking about NDE, this is some of the tools that we use that we found very helpful. So we had, like Bond, we had an Microsoft Planner board to track the work to do. We organized our slightly different areas. You can kind of see the screenshot there. They're just tiny. It's not that exciting. One thing I did do is create a little icon or a little logo for the project, which I would then try and put in emails so that people would remember what the project we were talking about was. We have a premium sandbox, which is always very useful for testing. So that was great to have because we could play around with code tables that would affect our production environment if we were doing it in production. We also set off a 1 day a week project day in our Brunswick office, which is usually empty. Disadvantage of working in open plan offices is that it can get noisy. It's hard to get a team of 4 people together to look over some very technical information. So it was really nice having a quiet office where we could go together and spend a day just working together on those things. We'd often split up and do work during the rest of the week too, but that was good to sort of track progress and talk through difficult questions. We kept an Excel spreadsheet as a change log to record all the config changes we'd made, and that's partly to help us move from sandbox to production when we go live with that, because again, like I said, there's, you know, CAD table settings and code. I mean, a lot of the stuff will come across in the customization package, but there's lots of other settings that you need to fiddle with too. So another thing I did was it was just a Word document with a table in it around to other teams within the library saying, hey, if Primo changes, if the interface of Primo changes, what does your team need to do? Like, do you need to update documentation? Do you need to update websites? Do you need to update procedures? Because we have a lot of patron-facing information and internal information. So just getting that document filled out helped me understand what needed to be done. And I also asked them about timeframes. How long do you think that would take? So that worked quite well. And then, like Jesse mentioned, we used Copilot and Gemini to generate quite a lot of our code. And we actually use that to create our SVG icons, Jesse. I don't think we found Boxy, but yeah, I think we had a few of that. So yeah, I'm a bit of an AI skeptic, but we did actually find some useful use out of them. In terms of external support, we did that NDE UI cohort program in November, and we didn't find it very helpful. A lot of the instructions that they shared with us were just existing material. A lot of that existing material feels a bit like that how to draw an owl meme that I've got there. I don't know if you can see that, but it was either really basic, or then there were people asking questions and they were really super detailed and specific, and there wasn't much in between. So that was kind of difficult. Meeting times weren't great for the Asia Pacific time zone. And like I said, there was wildly varying skill levels and questions. It's run in Basecamp, sorry. It's run in Basecamp. They have a discussion board where you can ask questions, but like I said, the questions are often very hyper-specific or really technically detailed. The way that the cohort program was sold, it made it sound like that there would be quite steps by step walking you through the process, but we didn't really find it in practice that was the case. What we did find was that ANZREG and the Primo mailing lists were excellent sources of information. There was a bit of an ANZREG NDE adopters group that I think Peter talked about too, and that was great to get some ideas and talk to people. Lots of good advice on those mailing lists, lots of people identifying issues that, meant we didn't have to go hunting around for them. So those, I highly recommend both those as resources to be following, and maybe to dig back through the archives if you are yet to start your NDE journey. I've just got a couple of quick screenshots of what our current view looks like. So it's adopted this nice navy blue RMIT branding. It looks quite nice. We have, I don't know if you can see that little yellow dot there, but we did borrow Bond's a code for identifying Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander content, which is something that is quite important as part of RMIT's. We call it our responsible practice. We just blinked on the term there. And we've got, that's one of our facets there at the side, so that to help educators, academics identify Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander material that they can include in their courses. We did a big project about that last year to include that, most of which we copied the homework from Bond, and we've incorporated some of that code again. In terms of the go, no-go decision, so RMIT orientation started on the 23rd of February 2026. That was we knew the system either had to be live before then or we weren't going to go live. Just didn't, like I think Craig was saying, we don't want to launch a new interface halfway through semester. It's just disorientating for students. We also needed to allow enough time for other teams to do that work I mentioned, updating documentation procedures. So we set end of January as our go, no-go decision date. My original plan was that we were going to consult with our stakeholders. We've got a big spreadsheet of, who would like to be consulted and who would like to be informed if we're making changes to Primo. In practice, we found that there were enough technical issues that we just made the call ourselves and said, look, I don't think it's quite ready. And this is the list of the main showstoppers. I would say that individually, probably, if it was just one of these things, it wouldn't be a showstopper by themselves, but we just felt overall, it just kind of felt like people would get a new interface and go, oh, but it's not as good as the old one, or this is difficult and awkward. And because we knew that some of these are being fixed in the May release, it just seemed, well, why don't we just wait? Why take a step backwards rather than go forward with something that's slightly worse? So there's some issues with the document delivery request form not working correctly if you're trying to request a specific chapter. The NDE file viewer doesn't yet support all the file types we have in our Alma digital collection. Voice search is not yet available, which seems like an accessibility issue, even though we did some UX stats, and only a tiny percentage of people use the voice search. And most of those are people who might seem to have accidentally clicked voice search and then turned it off immediately. But the people who need it, So let's wait until we have it. The search inside journal feature is not yet available. There's a couple of issues with Leganto and how it works with NDE. And also the back to front initials when you log in. If you log into NDE, it displays your initials as surname, first name. So in my case, that would be WD instead of DW. And ex-Libris really don't seem to want to fix that. They say, oh, you can swap it through the entire system. It's like, well, I don't want to swap it anywhere else. I just want to swap it here. Yeah, I don't know whether that's going to get fixed, but that was kind of disappointing for us. In terms of our next steps, we're planning to come back to this mid-year. We haven't chosen a specific date yet. We're in the middle of just kicking off another major project at the moment, so we'll think about that. But ideally, we would launch in the semester break, middle of the year. We are soft launching the Primo Research Assistant in the meantime, which is meaning we're going to turn it on, but we're not really going to make a song and dance about it. I want to see if people find it and start using it. We have a student advisory board at RMIT Library, which is great. They had done some testing with the Primo Research Assistant and they quite liked it, which is why we're turning it on. We'll probably promote it more when we actually go to NDE. And the last thing is the big project that I alluded to we are merging our Vietnam colleagues into our system. They have their own instance of Alma and Primo and Leganto. We're merging them into our system. If we go live with Primo NDE, they'll need to go live with Primo NDE as well. So we're going to assist them. And the great thing is we've now got a lot more knowledge under our belt so that we can do that. And I think that is all my slides. So I will stop sharing and hand back to you, Joe.
Sure, Dave. Thank you for that. And so it's a not quite yet, not a no, but we're just gonna put a pause on it. We're looking at also going live in mid-semester, well, between semester breaks as well this year. So it's interesting to see where everyone's at with it. We've just about filled up our hour, so I don't know if our presenters have time to stay for a few minutes for some questions if people have got them. Cool. Awesome. That's good news. So is there anything that people would particularly like to ask? All right, I will ask a question. Around the analytics that Craig and Peter and Jesse were talking about, what are your findings most useful? Is there anything new in NDE that wasn't available in VE before that you're finding useful as you go forward?
Primo VE, you can't see every single search, I guess, or every single time someone does something in the system. So in Mixpanel, you have much better visibility on every single little thing that happens, including the barrage of bot traffic that we are getting. So in V, we could have had the same amount of traffic and we would never know. But now with the NDE UI, that's kind of tracked because they're doing searches in NDE, and I can see that and attempt to filter it out from certain views without removing that data altogether. I've been playing around with that, but certainly being able to see every single search and the flow of a user. So where did they start? Where did they end up? You can see the kind of the traffic of where they're going, similar to what you could do in Google Analytics.
Awesome.
But there's so much there, like there's so much data in there that if you had a question, you can probably answer it in the next panel.
And sort of related to that, I can see Jan said, for Jesse, did you integrate the Google Analytics into the NDE?
Haven't
as well?
attempted that at all, and I don't think we would need it. I don't think it has anything that we would want that we couldn't get out of Mixpanel. I'm just thinking, as I said that, I'm thinking, with Google Analytics, you could set up tags to track, say, your integrations like libkey or browsing links when they're clicked, or maybe when a chat's opened. So I haven't checked that in Mixpanel whether that level of integrations are tracked in some way yet. So I haven't done that, but that might be something that you couldn't do in Mixpanel.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. And Mike had a question for Craig. Were there any unexpected issues with the rollback you had to do?
No, there was none, because what happens with the NDE Go Live is it's actually just picking traffic from one instance of VE. So when we basically duplicated our NDE package and deleted it, the VE instance was still there and it was still accepting traffic. So there was no... Hope that made sense.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, this one. When using customized components, the package uploaded to Alma doesn't contain the app folder. How do you do version control and work with multiple developers? How do you decide what's your one true source?
That was a tricky thing that Peter and I had to work through. When we set up this development environment, it was kind of brand new for us. We're using VS Code. IT created how would you describe it, Peter? Our library code.
I don't know, a server.
A server.
It's a server
it's not
with VS
installed on
Code running.
So it's not installed on one computer. Version control isn't just on one computer. It's in our library code server. But even then, once you overwrite code in your custom module, what you had there previously isn't there anymore and it's gone. So yeah, that version control was a big thing for us to tackle. So within our library code server, we have a separate folder, which is version history of individual custom components. So I've got a folder there for our First Australians indicators. So anytime I make a change, I copy that whole folder from our custom module and paste it into our version control folder and append that with the date. And so far that's working. So we're doing it all within VS Code in our little server space that ITS set up for us.
Oh, thank you.
Here at Lincoln, version control, what I do is before I upload anything to the new customized package, I actually download what's currently there, archive it, file it, and then upload the new one. So I've always got that version control and I can roll back directly should something go wrong.
And
Sweet.
if I can add one small thing, one thing that we found useful at RMIT is, of course, it's really easy to duplicate a view, particularly if you're editing a customization package. You can just duplicate a view, make all the changes you want in your heart's content, and then we talk about pushing them back into the main system. We weren't being particularly rigorous in our version control. I mentioned that the user experience designer we had, he created a whole kind of workflow, like automation tool for downloading packages and backing them up there. It only worked on Mac and we've got PCs. So it was great for him when he was playing around with the cascading style sheets, but not so useful for us. But yeah, it is one of those situations where you can up with like 15 copies of the customization package on your hard drive and you're going, hang on, which one was which? So it does need to require you to pay some attention.
And I think with NDE, it's different to VE because with VE, you could just download the package that was previously there, unzip it, and see every single little bit of code you had. Whereas within NDE, if you're doing the custom modules, you can't unzip it and see your First Australians indicator custom module as you had created it. It's not the same. So that version control process might look different when you move to NDE.
Oh, thank you. I had the random question has anyone had to, since their move to NDE, change any workflows significantly with the... Is it
I can't
working
think
pretty
of
much
any.
the same?
It's pretty much, yeah.
Awesome.
There was a few changes around Leganto, and it's already been mentioned about requests and stuff like that. So,
Awesome.
but that was it.
Nice to hear. All right. Has anyone else got any questions you wanted to bring up? All right. What I will do then, I'll say thank you to folks for staying a little bit longer so we could get through those questions from everyone. But on that note, I will wrap us up with a karakia to both ends. Kia whakairia te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia tūruki, whakataha ai, kia tūruki, whakataha ai. Haumie, huie, taekie. Thank you to you all, and enjoy your evenings or afternoons, as the case may be in different places, and we will see you all in the next webinar. All right,
Thanks,
thanks,
Joe.
folks.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.